What if the pyramids were not built with ramps and ropes, but with sound? 80-ton blocks of granite, moved not by muscle, but by melody. Look closer at what the ancient chambers are still telling us. The walls of these temples do not just echo, they resonate at specific frequencies that modern acoustic engineers cannot fully explain. Carvings that depict not tools, but instruments. Geometric alignments across Stonehenge, the jungles of South America, and the Egyptian plateau that match the precise wavelengths of sonic levitation. This is not mythology. This is physics. By the end of this investigation, you will see the science, the structures, and the suppressed experiments that prove specific frequencies can vibrate the molecules of granite to the point of weightlessness. The ancients did not drag these stones into place. They sang them there. And the echo of that lost technology is still humming inside these walls right now, waiting for us to finally learn how to listen. The heat of the Egyptian sun rests heavily upon the Giza Plateau, a vast expanse of limestone and sand that has witnessed the rise and fall of countless empires. Hey, the Great Pyramid stands not merely as a tomb or monument, but as a silent witness to a technology that modern science is only beginning to comprehend. To look upon these stones is to look upon a mystery that defies the simple explanation of copper chisels and hemp ropes. We must look closer, beyond the surface of the weathered casing stones, and venture into the dark, cool heart of the structure. Inside the king's chamber, the atmosphere changes. The weight of millions of tons of stone presses down from above, yet the space feels strangely alive. The walls, the floor, and the ceiling are composed of massive blocks of red granite, transported from quarries hundreds of miles away in Aswan. Unlike the limestone that makes up the bulk of the pyramid, this granite is rich in quartz crystals. In the dim light of a handheld lantern, the tiny facets of these minerals catch the light, hinting at a hidden complexity. When a person stands in the center of this room and hums a low, steady note, the entire chamber seems to respond. The sound does not simply echo. It vibrates. It resonates within the very marrow of the bones. It is as if the room itself is a musical instrument, tuned to a frequency that has remained unchanged for 5 millennia. This resonance is not an accident of architecture. It is a result of precise and deliberate engineering of sound. Acoustic engineers who have studied the chamber note that it is tuned to a frequency that interacts with the human body in profound ways. Some call it the frequency of the earth, a low hum that exists just at the edge of human hearing. When this frequency is activated, the quartz within the granite walls begins to experience a phenomenon known as piezoelectricity. Under the pressure of the surrounding stone and the stimulation of sound, these crystals generate a minute electrical charge. This suggests a radical possibility. What if the ancients did not view sound as mere entertainment or a byproduct of speech, but as a primary tool for manipulating the physical world? Consider the scale of the task. The beams that form the roof of the king's chamber weigh as much as 70 tons each. In a world without steel cables or hydraulic cranes, the movement of such weight remains one of the greatest enigmas of history. Conventional archaeology suggests thousands of workers labored for decades, using ramps and sheer physical force. Yet, there are whispers in the ancient texts and legends from around the world that speak of a different method. They speak of stones that were moved by the sound of trumpets, of priests who sang to the earth until the rocks lost their weight, and of builders who used chants to guide massive monoliths into place with the precision of a jeweler. To understand how sound could possibly affect matter on such a scale, we must look at the science of cymatics. When sand is placed on a metal plate and a specific frequency is applied, the grains do not move randomly. They arrange themselves into beautiful, complex geometric patterns. As the frequency changes, the patterns shift, becoming more intricate and organized. This demonstrates that sound has the power to create order out of chaos. It is a fundamental force that can organize physical substance into specific shapes. If the ancients understood the relationship between frequency and matter, they might have found a way to use resonance to overcome the forces of gravity and friction. In the silence of the desert night, the stones of the pyramid seem to hold their breath. The precision with which they are joined is staggering. In many places, a thin blade cannot be inserted between the blocks. This level of accuracy suggests a method of cutting and fitting that transcends the capabilities of primitive tools. If sound can be used to organize matter, could it also be used to soften it? Modern experiments with ultrasonic vibrations have shown that certain frequencies can make hard materials behave like liquids, allowing them to be shaped and molded with ease. If the builders of Giza possessed such knowledge, the pyramid was not built through the brute force of 1,000 sweating backs, but through the elegant application of harmonic vibration. The theory of a lost acoustic technology extends far beyond the borders of Egypt. Across the Atlantic, in the high Andes of Peru, the fortress of Sacsayhuaman presents a similar puzzle. There, massive stones weighing over 100 tons are fitted together with such complexity that they resemble a giant jigsaw puzzle. The edges are rounded and pillowed, looking almost as if the stone had been softened before being pressed into place. There are no tool marks. There are no explanations that satisfy the modern mind, other than the possibility that these stones were moved and shaped by a force we no longer utilize. In the oral traditions of the local peoples, there are stories of a golden staff that would vibrate when placed in the ground, signaling where a city should be built. There are tales of gods who use celestial music to raise the walls of their temples. While these stories are often dismissed as myth, they may be the poetic remnants of a technical manual. To a culture that has lost the understanding of frequency, the description of a vibrating tool would naturally become a magical staff. The description of a resonant harmonic will become a sacred song. As we move deeper into the study of archaeoacoustics, we find that ancient sites are often located in places with unique geological and acoustic properties. Stonehenge in England is not just a circle of stones. It is an acoustic arena. When sound is produced within the circle, the blue stones and sarcens reflected in a way that creates a localized sound field, isolating the interior from the outside world. The people standing within the circle would have experienced a sensory environment entirely different from those standing just a few feet away. The stones were not just markers of the sun and moon. They were amplifiers of the unseen. The whisper of granite is a whisper of forgotten science. It is a reminder that human history is not a straight line of progress, but a series of peaks and valleys. We may have mastered the digital world, but we have lost a tactile, resonant connection to the physical world that our ancestors possessed. They lived in a world where the vibration of a voice could move a mountain and the harmony of a temple could heal a body. The Great Pyramid, then, serves as a giant resonator, a stone machine designed to capture and amplify the natural vibrations of the earth itself. It is positioned at the exact center of the O's landmass, aligned to the cardinal points with precision that rivals modern GPS. This alignment ensures that it is tuned to the rotational and orbital frequencies of the planet. It is an anchor of sound in a sea of silence. When the wind brushes against the limestone of the plateau, it creates a low-frequency hum, a sound that is felt rather than heard. This is the infrasound, the deep voice of the world. In the ancient world, those who knew how to listen could harness this voice. They understood that the universe is not made of solid objects, but of waves of energy. By matching their own vibrations to the vibrations of the stones, they became part of the architecture itself. They did not fight against the weight of the granite. They danced with it. The king's chamber remains dark, its secrets locked within the red stone. But as modern researchers bring more sensitive microphones and more advanced acoustic modeling into these spaces, the stones are beginning to speak again. They tell a story of a time when humanity was in tune with the harmonics of the cosmos. They suggest that the foundations of civilization were not laid with hammers, but with a gentle, persistent whisper of a resonant frequency. As we leave the heart of the pyramid and return to the blinding light of the Egyptian day, the structures around us take on a new meaning. The temples, the obelisks, and the giant statues are no longer just relics of a dead religion. They are the remnants of a sonic landscape, a world built upon the principles of music and mathematics. The silence of the desert is not an absence of sound, but a vast, expectant stage waiting for the right note to be struck once more. The study of these ancient frequencies invites us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about the past. It asks us to imagine a world where the distinction between art, science, and spirit did not exist. In that world, to build was to sing, and to sing was to create. The whisper of granite in time is a call to remember that we are part of a vibrating universe, and that the echoes of our ancestors still resonate in the stones they left behind. We are only now beginning to hear the melody they composed so long ago. The air within the Great Pyramid of Giza is thick and still. It carries a physical weight of millions of tons of limestone and granite, a pressure that seems to press against the skin as much as the ears. To reach the heart of the structure, one must ascend the Grand Gallery, a long, sloping corridor with corbelled walls that draw the eye upward into the shadows. Every footstep echoes, but the sound does not simply vanish. It lingers, bouncing off the polished surfaces of the stone, creating a strange, overlapping texture of noise. At the end of this climb lies a small, rectangular opening. Crawling through it, the space suddenly expands into the king's chamber. This room is unlike any other part of the pyramid. While most of the structure is built from local limestone, this inner sanctum is composed entirely of massive blocks of red granite. These stones were transported from Aswan, hundreds of miles to the south. They are joined with such precision that the blade of a knife cannot fit between them. There are no hieroglyphs here. There are no paintings of gods or pharaohs. The walls are smooth, dark, and imposing. In the corner sits the coffer, a lidless box carved from a single block of the same red granite. It is a room of absolute geometric perfection, and yet it feels less like a tomb and more like the interior of a massive, dormant machine. When a visitor stands in the center of the king's chamber and hums a low, steady note, something extraordinary happens. The room begins to speak back. It does not merely reflect the sound like a simple echo. It amplifies it. The stone seems to catch the vibration, holding it and spinning it into a rich, deep resonance that fills the entire volume of the space. This is not a random occurrence. Modern acoustic engineers have measured the resonant frequency of the chamber and found it to be incredibly specific. It is a frequency that corresponds to the deep tones of the human voice. When a person chants or speaks at this particular pitch, the entire chamber acts as a giant resonator, creating a standing wave that vibrates through the floor, the walls, and the very bones of anyone standing within it. The source of this resonance lies in the material itself. Red granite is rich in quartz crystals. In modern science, we know that quartz is piezoelectric. This means that when the crystals are subjected to mechanical stress or vibration, they generate a small electrical charge. Conversely, when an electrical charge is applied, the crystals vibrate. This property is what allows us to use quartz in everything from wristwatches to high-precision sensors and radio equipment. Within the king's chamber, the sheer mass of the granite slabs above, known as the relieving chambers, creates a state of constant, immense pressure. If the pyramid were designed to be a sonic device, these quartz crystals would be the core of its engine, vibrating in sympathy with the sound waves introduced into the room. We must consider the possibility that the builders were not just masons, but masters of harmonics. Above the king's chamber are 5 additional layers of granite beams, separated by air spaces. For decades, archaeologists have called these the relieving chambers, assuming their only purpose was to distribute the weight of the pyramid and prevent the king's chamber from collapsing. However, Acoustic analysis suggests another potential function. These chambers, with their rough tops and smooth bottoms, may have acted as a series of acoustic baffles or resonators designed to tune the entire structure to a specific frequency. Like the body of a cello or the pipes of a great organ, the interior of the pyramid seems built to manipulate sound on a monumental scale. The granite coffer itself is perhaps the most mysterious component of this acoustic puzzle. It was not cast in a mold, but was hollowed out from a solid block of stone. When struck, it does not produce a dull thud. Instead, it rings like a bell, producing a deep, haunting tone that lasts for several seconds. Some researchers believe the coffer was never meant to hold a body. They suggest it was a focal point for sound, a place where a person would lie to experience the full, concentrated power of the chamber's resonance. At certain frequencies, the vibration is so intense that it can be felt in the chest and the head, potentially inducing altered states of consciousness or deep meditative trances. The concept of a sonic architecture is not limited to Egypt. Across the ancient world, we find structures that seem to prioritize sound over sight. In the subterranean galleries of the Chavin de Huanta in the Peruvian Andes, there is a complex system of stone conduits designed to channel the sound of rushing water. When water was diverted into these channels, it created a low-frequency roar that echoed through the ceremonial chambers, sounding to the faithful like the voice of a god. In the hypogeum of Hal Safieni on the island of Malta, there is a small niche known as the oracle hole. When a man speaks into this niche in a deep voice, the sound resonates throughout the entire 3-story underground complex. The frequency found there is consistently around 110 Hz. This number, 110 Hz, appears with startling frequency in ancient resonant sites. Scientific studies on the human brain have shown that this specific frequency can shift brain activity from the left prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for logical and linear thinking, to the right prefrontal cortex, which is associated with intuition, creativity, and emotional processing. It is the frequency that bridges the gap between the conscious and the subconscious. If the ancients were aware of this, then the king's chamber was not a place of death, but a place of profound transformation. The sound was a key that unlocked the potential of the human mind, using the Earth's own materials to create a biological and spiritual resonance. As we stand in the darkness of the king's chamber, we must ask how the builders achieved such precision. The stones of the pyramid are cut to tolerances that rival modern aerospace engineering. Some theorists suggest that sound was not just a byproduct of the design, but the very tool used to build it. This is a theory of sonic drilling and acoustic levitation. While it sounds like science fiction, the principle of using sound to manipulate matter is a well-documented physical phenomenon. Today, we use ultrasonic waves to cut through hard materials and to clean delicate components. In laboratory settings, scientists use acoustic levitation to suspend small objects in midair using nothing but the pressure of sound waves. The idea is that if one could find the resonant frequency of a block of granite, one could, in theory, neutralize its weight or soften its structure, making it as easy to shape as clay. While we have no written records from the Old Kingdom explaining such a process, the physical evidence is haunting. There are granite drill cores found in Egypt that show a feed rate into the stone that is significantly faster than what can be achieved with modern diamond-tipped drills. The spirals on the inside of these holes suggest that the drill was biting into the stone with incredible efficiency. Some believe this was only possible if the stone were being vibrated at a high frequency, allowing the tool to glide through the granite as if it were vibrating through water. This brings us to a radical reimagining of the Great Pyramid. Rather than a monument to a single ruler's ego, it may have been a functional piece of technology, a giant crystalline resonator that drew energy from the earth and the human voice. In this view, the pyramid is a bridge between the physical and the intangible. The red granite, the quartz, the geometric proportions, and the specific frequencies all work together to create a space where the laws of physics are manipulated through harmony. The silence of the king's chamber is deceptive. It is a waiting silence. It is the silence of a bell that has not been struck in thousands of years. As modern researchers bring their microphones and their frequency generators into these ancient spaces, they are not just measuring echoes. They are rediscovering a lost language of vibration. They are finding that the ancients did not just live in the world. They tuned themselves to it. They understood that every stone, every atom, and every breath has a frequency, and that by mastering these sounds, they could build structures that resonated with the very fabric of reality. In the dim light of the chamber, the massive granite blocks seem to pulse with a low, invisible energy. The air feels charged, as if a great storm is about to break. Though the sky outside is clear and the desert is still, we are standing in the middle of a masterpiece of acoustic engineering, a testament to a time when humanity understood the power of the word and the tone. The Chamber of Kings serves as a reminder that some secrets are not written in books or carved in stone, but are carried on the wind, waiting for the right note to call them back to life. As we move back through the narrow passage, leaving the resonance of the granite behind, the weight of the pyramid remains with us. We carry the hum of the stone in our ears. The journey into the heart of the pyramid reveals that the past was not a quiet place. It was a symphony of engineering, where the most solid objects on earth were made to sing. The stones are silent now, but their song is still there, embedded in the geometry and the quartz, waiting for a future that is finally ready to listen. The resonance of the king's chamber is only one movement in a global composition that spans continents and millennia, a melody of stone and sound that continues to echo through the halls of history. The morning mist clings to the tall grass of the Salisbury Plain, a vast and rolling landscape in Wiltshire, England. As the first light of dawn begins to bleed across the horizon, the grey silhouettes of the world's most famous megalithic monument emerge from the gloom. To the casual observer, Stonehenge is a triumph of visual engineering and celestial alignment. It is a solar calendar, a burial ground, and a monument to the ancestors. However, when viewed through the lens of acoustic archaeology, these massive pillars of sarsen and bluestone transform into something even more complex. They become a sophisticated acoustic chamber, a prehistoric concert hall designed to manipulate sound in ways that modern science is only beginning to understand. To step inside the inner sanctum of Stonehenge is to enter a different auditory world. While the wind may howl across the open plains outside, the interior of the circle offers a strange and unexpected stillness. This is not merely the result of the stones acting as a windbreak. It is a result of a deliberate and intricate arrangement of vertical posts and horizontal lintels that capture, reflect, and amplify sound waves. For the people of the Neolithic period, this space was likely a place of intense sensory immersion, where the voice of a leader or the beat of a drum would have been transformed into a physical force. In recent years, researchers have utilized acoustic modeling to recreate the soundscape of Stonehenge as it would have existed at its peak nearly 4,000 years ago. By using a 1/12 scale model known as Mini Stonehenge, scientists discovered that the arrangement of the stones created a phenomenon known as the cocktail party effect. In a modern setting, this effect allows a person to focus on a single conversation in a noisy room. Within the circle of Stonehenge, the acoustic environment would have functioned similarly, enhancing the clarity of speech for those standing inside while simultaneously shielding them from the distractions of the outside world. The stones themselves are the primary instruments in this silent symphony. The outer ring of sarsen stones, which are composed of a hard silicious rock, acts as a highly reflective surface. When a sound is produced at the center of the monument, it does not simply dissipate into the open air. Instead, it bounces off the flat faces of the sarsens, returning to the center with remarkable speed and clarity. This creates a reverberation time that is surprisingly long for an outdoor structure. In a typical open field, sound decays almost instantly. Inside the completed henge, however, the sound of a voice or a drum would have lingered, creating a sense of majesty and importance. Beyond the massive sarcens lie the bluestones, smaller pillars brought from the Preselau Hills in Wales, over 140 miles away. For decades, archaeologists have puzzled over why the ancient builders went to such extraordinary lengths to transport these specific stones across such a vast distance. While their color and geological rarity are often cited, researchers have recently discovered another potential reason: their musicality. The bluestones of the Preselau Hills are known as lithophones, or rocks that ring like bells when struck. In the mountains of Wales, these stones have been used for thousands of years to produce musical notes. When struck with a smaller hammerstone, they emit a metallic, clanging sound that can carry for miles across the valleys. It is highly probable that the Neolithic people recognized this unique property. By bringing these ringing stones to Stonehenge, they were not just bringing building materials, they were bringing the voices of the mountains. They were incorporating a musical element into the very fabric of the temple. In the context of a ritual, the striking of these bluestones would have added a high-pitched, percussive layer to the deep, resonant echoes of the sarcens. The effect of this acoustic design goes beyond mere aesthetics. It likely had a profound psychological impact on those who gathered within the circle. When sound is reflected in such a controlled manner, it can create standing waves and interference patterns. In certain spots within the henge, sound waves can cancel each other out, creating pockets of absolute silence. In other spots, the waves can reinforce one another, causing the air itself to vibrate with an intensity that can be felt in the chest and the bones. This is particularly true of low-frequency sounds, such as the steady rhythm of a large frame drum or the deep chanting of a group of people. These low frequencies, or infrasound, are known to interact with the human body in strange ways. At certain hertz levels, sound can induce feelings of awe, dread, or even euphoria. It can influence the heart rate and the respiratory system, potentially leading to altered states of consciousness. For a prehistoric society, these physical sensations would have been interpreted as a presence of the divine or the breathing of the earth itself. The architect of Stonehenge were not just building a monument to look at, they were building an environment to be felt. The acoustic landscape of the Salisbury Plain extends far beyond Stonehenge. A few miles to the north lies Avebury, an even larger stone circle that encompasses an entire village. While Stonehenge is precise and contained, Avebury is sprawling and organic. Yet, even here, the principles of sound art play. The massive ditch and bank that surround the stones at Avebury serve a dual purpose. While they mark the boundary of the sacred space, they also act as an acoustic barrier, trapping sound within the enclosure and reflecting it back toward the center. When one stands among the gargantuan stones of Avebury, the world outside seems to fade away. The hum of modern life is replaced by a heavy, expectant silence. It is a silence that feels alive, as if the stones themselves are waiting for a signal to begin their song. Archaeological experiments at Avebury have shown that the placement of the stones creates specific pathways for sound to travel. A person speaking at one end of the circle can be heard clearly at the other, despite the enormous distance. This suggests that the entire site was designed as a multi-sensory theater, where every word and every note was amplified by the geometry of the earth and stone. This focus on the auditory experience is not unique to the British Isles. From the passage tombs of Ireland to the megalithic temples of Malta, ancient structures consistently exhibit sophisticated acoustic properties. In the underground house Saflieni Hypogeum of Malta, there is a specific chamber known as the Oracle Room. When a man with a deep voice speaks into a small niche in the wall, the entire underground complex vibrates with a resonant frequency of 110 hertz. This specific frequency is a recurring theme in ancient architecture. Studies have shown that 110 Hz is a frequency that most effectively shifts human brain activity from the left prefrontal cortex to the right, a transition that is associated with creativity, intuition, and meditative states. The realization that these ancient sites were tuned to specific frequencies raises a startling possibility. Did the ancients possess a lost science of sound? Were they aware of the biological and psychological effects of resonance? And did they use this knowledge to facilitate healing, communal bonding, or spiritual revelation? The consistency of these acoustic findings across different cultures and continents suggests that this was not a series of accidents. It was a deliberate choice, a fundamental component of their understanding of the world. To the Neolithic mind, the boundary between the physical and the spiritual was thin, and sound was a bridge that crossed it. A song was not just a melody. It was a vibration that could move the soul and perhaps even the physical world. In the absence of written language, the oral tradition was a primary means of preserving knowledge. In such a culture, the acoustic environment would have been of paramount importance. The stone circles were the libraries and the cathedrals of their time, where the resonance of the stones ensured that the stories of the ancestors were heard with clarity and power. As the sun rises higher over Stonehenge, the shadows of the Sarsens lengthen across the grass. The tourists begin to arrive, their voices filling the air with a modern cacophony. Yet, beneath the chatter, the ancient symphony remains. It is hidden in the curvature of the stones, in the density of the rock, and in the precise distances between the pillars. It is a silent music, waiting for the right frequency to bring it back to life. The Henge Silent Symphony is a reminder that history is not just something we see, it is something we hear. It is an echo from a time when humanity was more deeply attuned to the rhythms of the natural world. By studying the acoustics of these ancient sites, we are not just learning about how they were built, we are learning about how our ancestors perceived reality. They lived in a world where the stones could speak and the earth could sing. And while we may have forgotten how to listen, the music has never truly stopped. It continues to vibrate through the millennia, a testament to a time when sound was the most powerful tool in the human arsenal, capable of turning a simple circle of stones into a gateway to the infinite. The exploration of these sonic landscapes reveals a common thread that connects the disparate cultures of the ancient world. Whether it is the echoing chambers of a tomb or the resonant circles of the plains, the intentional use of sound suggests a global understanding of the hidden forces that shape our experience. This was a world built on harmony, in the most literal sense of the word. As we move forward into the next chapter of this journey, we look beyond the British Isles to the vast deserts and high plateaus where other civilizations sought to master the wind and the vibration of the earth, searching for the ultimate frequency that could bridge the gap between the terrestrial and the divine. The Symphony of the Henge is but one movement in a much larger global orchestration of stone and sound. In the quiet hours of a tropical Florida night during the early 20th century, a spindly man named Edward Leedskalnin moves through his garden of coral. He is 5 feet tall and weighs barely 100 pounds, yet he is single-handedly shifting blocks of limestone that weigh 30 tons. He works in total solitude, hidden behind high walls. When curious neighbors attempt to spy on him, he stops. He claims to have rediscovered the secrets used by the builders of the pyramids, secrets involving the manipulation of magnetic forces and the application of specific frequencies. Leedskalnin never wrote down a technical manual. He left behind a cryptic legacy known as Coral Castle, a complex of massive megaliths that defies traditional explanation. There are no cranes, no heavy pulleys, and no signs of industrial machinery. Some stories suggest that children peeking through the gaps in his fence saw him singing to the stones or holding his hands over them as they floated like balloons through the air. While these accounts remain anecdotal, they represent a modern entry into an ancient and persistent legend that spans the entire globe. This is a legend of sonic levitation, the idea that sound is not merely something we hear, but a physical force capable of defying gravity itself. The transition from understanding resonance to imagining levitation requires a shift in our perception of matter. We are taught to see a stone as a solid, inert object, a dense collection of atoms bound by gravity to the earth. However, if we view that stone through the lens of modern physics, it is mostly empty space filled with vibrating energy. Every material has a resonant frequency, a specific note at which its atoms begin to oscillate in harmony. The theory of sonic levitation suggests that if one could find this precise frequency and amplify it with enough intensity, the gravitational bond between the object and the ground could be severed. This concept finds its most striking historical documentation in the high, thin air of the Himalayas. In the 1930s, a Swedish doctor named Henrik Kjellson reported an extraordinary sight in a remote Tibetan monastery. He described a group of monks who had gathered to move a massive stone block to a cliffside construction site. The monks did not use ropes or levers. Instead, they arranged themselves in a precise semicircle. 19 musical instruments, including large drums and 6-foot-long silver trumpets, were aimed at a stone resting in a small pit. According to Kjellson, the monks began to play. The drum started with a slow, rhythmic beat, a low pulse that vibrated through the ground. The trumpets joined in, creating a wall of sound that grew in volume and intensity. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, as the tempo increased and the various tones converged into a singular, shattering chord, the stone began to sway. Slowly, incredibly, it lifted from the earth. It did not merely rise, it accelerated, following a curved path through the air and landing perfectly on the ledge of a cliff 250 meters above. Kjellson was an engineer by training, a man of science who was deeply skeptical of magic. He calculated the dimensions, the weights, and the positions. He concluded that the monks were creating a standing wave of sound. By positioning the instruments in a specific geometric arc, they were focusing acoustic energy into a single point, creating a pocket of high pressure beneath the stone that overcame its weight. While skeptics suggest the story was an exaggeration or a misunderstanding of traditional techniques, the account remains a cornerstone for those who believe that the ancients possessed a sophisticated understanding of acoustic physics that we are only now beginning to replicate in the laboratory. In modern science, acoustic levitation is a proven reality, though currently limited to a small scale. In high-technology laboratories, researchers use ultrasonic transducers to create standing waves. These waves consist of nodes and antinodes. At the nodes, the pressure of the sound is enough to suspend small objects, such as water droplets, chemical samples, or even small insects, mid-air. The object rests in a pocket of stillness, held aloft by the invisible hands of vibration. The challenge in scaling this technology to move a 10-ton block lies in the sheer amount of energy required. To lift a megalith, the volume of the sound would have to be deafening, perhaps even destructive to the human body. Yet, the proponents of the lost frequency theory suggest that the ancients did not rely on volume alone. They argue that the secret lay in the combination of sound and geometry. Just as a magnifying glass can start a fire by focusing the gentle rays of the sun into a single point of heat, a stone circle or a pyramid might have acted as a lens for sound, focusing the ambient vibrations of the earth into a powerful upward force. We see echoes of this belief in the oral traditions of ancient Egypt. Many Arabic historians, writing centuries after the Great Pyramids were completed, recorded legends of how the stones were moved. They spoke of a magical papyrus inscribed with symbols that was placed under blocks. A priest would then strike the stone with a metal rod, and the block would move through the air for the distance of a bow shot. This process would be repeated until the stone reached its destination. While the word magic is often used in these translations, the description of a metal rod striking stone suggests a more physical process. It describes a percussion that creates a vibration. If the papyrus acted as a sort of acoustic insulator or directional guide, the legend begins to sound like a primitive description of a technological process. The Egyptian god Thoth, who was credited with the invention of writing and the construction of the sacred sites, was also known as a master of the voice. It was said that he could bring objects to life and move the very mountains through the power of his words and the precise intonation of his chants. The mystery of Baalbek in Lebanon adds another layer to this inquiry. Hey, in the foundation of the Temple of Jupiter lie the trilithon stones. These are 3 of the largest building blocks ever moved by human hands, each weighing approximately 800 tons. They are situated high above the ground, fitted together with such precision that a razor blade cannot pass between them. Even with modern cranes and hydraulic systems, moving an 800-ton block is a monumental engineering feat. The idea that these were moved by wooden rollers and thousands of slaves is increasingly questioned by engineers who note that the ground beneath such rollers would simply have collapsed under the weight. If the builders of Baalbek were not using brute force, they must have been using a form of leverage that bypassed the laws of friction and mass. This brings us back to the concept of the global grid and the Earth's natural frequency. Some theorists suggest that certain locations on the planet are naturally more resonant than others. They propose that these sites are points where the Earth's electromagnetic field and its acoustic vibrations intersect in a way that makes levitation easier. By building at these specific coordinates and using the right sonic triggers, the ancients might have been able to make the impossible stones feel weightless. This theory also touches upon the material of the stones themselves. Many megalithic structures are composed of granite or limestone. Granite is rich in quartz crystals, a material known for its piezoelectric properties. When quartz is subjected to mechanical stress, it generates an electrical charge. Conversely, when an electrical charge or a specific frequency is applied to quartz, it vibrates. This creates a feedback loop. If an ancient builder were to strike a granite block with a specific tone, the crystals within the stone would begin to resonate, potentially creating an electromagnetic field that interacted with the Earth's own gravity. The story of the walls of Jericho provides a biblical perspective on this phenomenon. The account describes an army marching around the city for 7 days, carrying the Ark of the Covenant and blowing ram's horns. On the 7th day, a great shout was let out, and the walls collapsed. While often interpreted as a divine miracle, an acoustic analysis suggests a different possibility. If the army was marching in rhythm and the horns were tuned to the resonant frequency of the city walls, the resulting vibration could have induced a structural failure. It is the same principle that allows an opera singer to shatter a wine glass. The sound does not push the glass over. It causes the glass to vibrate so violently that it can no longer hold its form. If sound can destroy a wall, can it also build one? The theory of sonic levitation suggests that the same principles of resonance used to shatter can also be used to stabilize and lift. It suggests a lost era of human history where the architect was also a musician and the engineer was a master of harmony. We see glimpses of this in the terminology we still use today. We speak of a building having good rhythm or design being in harmony with its surroundings. Perhaps these are not just metaphors, but linguistic fossils of a time when the world was shaped by the subtle power of the air. As we look at the massive, silent stones of Stonehenge, Giza, and Tiahuanaco, we are forced to wonder if we are missing half of the equation. We see the hardware, the heavy blocks, and the grand designs, but we have lost the software, the frequencies, and the songs that gave these stones life. The idea of sonic levitation remains on the fringes of mainstream archaeology, yet it persists because the alternative, that primitive people moved mountains with nothing but hemp rope and sweat, feels equally like a myth. The documentary of our past is missing its soundtrack. We are standing in a grand concert hall, looking at the instruments, but the music has stopped playing. As we continue to investigate the properties of sound and the secrets of the earth, we may find that the ancients were not limited by their lack of iron or electricity. Instead, they may have mastered a physics that was cleaner, more elegant, and infinitely more powerful than our own. They may have known that the entire universe is a song, and if you know the right note, you can move the world. The stones remain, heavy and defiant, waiting for a time when we might once again find the breath and the tone to lift them from their long slumber. The possibility lingers in the air, a silent vibration that suggests the laws of physics are not a prison, but a set of strings waiting to be played. As the investigation into these ancient echoes deepens, we find ourselves looking not just at the ground where the stones sit, but at the very air between them, wondering what sounds once filled the silence. To understand how the ancients might have manipulated the very fabric of their world, one must first understand that sound is not merely something heard. It is something felt, and more importantly, it is something seen. This is a domain of cymatics, the study of visible sound and vibration. It is a field that bridges the gap between the ethereal and the material, suggesting that the intricate geometries found in nature and ancient architecture are not random ornaments, but are instead the physical signatures of specific frequencies. When an orator speaks or a bell rings, waves of pressure move through the air, invisible and fleeting. But when these same vibrations encounter a medium like sand, water, or iron filings, the invisible becomes visible. The void is no longer empty. It is carved into precise, repeating patterns that mirror the complexity of the cosmos itself. The journey into this visual language begins in the late 18th century with the work of Ernst Chladni, a German physicist and musician often called the father of acoustics. Chladni took a simple brass plate, covered it with a thin layer of sand, and drew a violin bow across its edge. The result was transformative. As the plate vibrated, the sand did not scatter in a chaotic mess. Instead, it migrated away from the areas of most intense vibration and settled into the still points, known as nodal lines. In an instant, a perfect geometric star appeared on the plate. When he changed the pitch by drawing the bow faster or altering pressure, the pattern shifted. A simple circle became a complex mandala. A series of squares transformed into a lattice of interlocking diamonds. These are now known as Chladni figures, and they provide the first scientific proof that frequency has a direct, predictable, and geometric influence on physical matter. If a simple violin bow can command sand to form a perfect star, what could a massive, resonant stone chamber do? This is the question that haunts the halls of archaeological mystery. Proponents of the lost frequency theory suggest that the ancients understood cymatics on a level that modern science is only beginning to reclaim. They see the evidence of this knowledge not in laboratory experiments, but in the very stones of the world's most sacred sites. They point to the elaborate rose windows of Gothic cathedrals, the vaulted ceilings of Persian mosques, and the intricate stone carvings of the Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland. These designs often bear striking resemblance to cymatic patterns produced by specific musical notes. In the case of Rosslyn Chapel, some researchers believe that the strange, cubic carvings on the arches are actually musical notes frozen in stone, a silent symphony that could be played if one only knew the right sequence of frequencies. This perspective shifts our understanding of ancient craftsmanship. Perhaps the master builders were not simply decorators. Perhaps they were acoustic engineers, capturing the geometry of sound and anchoring it into the physical world. In this view, a temple is not just a building. It is a resonant vessel designed to vibrate at a specific frequency that aligns with the natural rhythms of the earth or the human body. When the right sound is introduced into such a space, the air itself takes on a structured form. The geometry of the building acts as a physical manifestation of the sound, creating a feedback loop where the architecture and the vibration become one. The study of cymatics took a giant leap forward in the mid-20th century through the work of Hans Jenny, a Swiss medical doctor and natural scientist. Jenny developed what he called the tonoscope, a device that allowed him to observe the effect of sound on various liquids and powders in 3 dimensions. He discovered that as the frequency increased, the complexity of the patterns increased as well. But more strikingly, he observed that certain sound produced patterns that mimic the organic structures of life. A certain frequency might create a shape that looked exactly like a sea urchin or starfish. Another might produce the spiral of a galaxy or the hexagonal honeycomb of a beehive. This led Jenny to a profound realization. If sound can create the appearance of biological form, then perhaps sound is the underlying organizing principle of all matter. He watched as a pile of inert dust, under the influence of a steady tone, began to circulate and flow like a living organism, pulsing with a heartbeat that matched the frequency. It appeared as though the sound was breathing life into the void. This brings us back to the ancient myths of creation, where the world is spoken into existence. From the primordial sound of Eastern traditions to the word that was in the beginning in Western theology, the idea that a vibration preceded the material world is a universal human story. Semantics provides a visual evidence that this poetic concept has a basis in physical reality. When we apply this lens to the megalithic structures of the ancient world, the implications are staggering. Consider the Great Pyramid of Giza. It is a structure of immense precision, with dimensions that reflect the mathematical constants of the earth and the stars. Within its king chamber, the granite walls are polished to a mirror finish, and the room itself is tuned to a very specific resonant frequency. If a person stands in that chamber and tones a specific note, the entire room begins to hum, vibrating the very air in the lungs of the speaker. Under the influence of such powerful resonance, what patterns will be carved into the air? If the ancients possess a way to amplify these sounds, could they have used the resulting cymatic patterns to organize matter on a massive scale? Some theorists propose that the massive stones used in these constructions were not moved by brute force, but by the application of resonance that rendered them momentarily weightless or more easily manipulated. While this remains in the realm of speculation, the principle of acoustic levitation is a proven scientific fact. In modern laboratories, scientists use standing waves of sound to suspend small objects, like water droplets or even small insects, in mid-air. The objects sit in the nodal points of the sound wave, the same still points where Chladni sand gathered. If the ancients understood the geometry of these waves, they may have been able to create large-scale nodal points, essentially carving paths through the air where heavy stones could glide as if they were as light as feathers. The beauty of semantics lies in its universality. The patterns are not dictated by human culture or artistic fashion. They are dictated by the laws of physics. A square will always form at a certain frequency relative to the size of the plate. A circle will always emerge from another. This suggests that the ancient were tapping into a universal language, a blueprint of reality that is written in vibration. When we see these patterns repeated in the art and architecture of disparate cultures who supposedly had no contact with one another, we are seeing the signature of the same physical laws. The spirals found in Newgrange in Ireland, the mandalas of Tibet, and the intricate tile work of the Alhambra all speak the same geometric tongue. This hidden language of sound also extends into the very cells of our bodies. Human beings are composed mostly of water, and water is one of the most sensitive mediums for cymatic expression. When exposed to beautiful, harmonic sounds, water forms crystalline, orderly structures. When exposed to discordant or chaotic noise, those structures break down. This suggests that the soundscapes of the ancient world, filled with the resonant chanting of priests or the rhythmic striking of stones, may have had a profound physiological effect on the people within them. The architecture was not just a sight for the eyes. It was a frequency bar for the soul, designed to bring the internal geometry of the human body into alignment with the external geometry of the universe. In this light, the void is never truly empty. It is a field of infinite potential, waiting for vibration to give it form. The ancient builders, perhaps more attuned to the subtle whispers of the earth than we are today, understood that to build a world, one must first learn to sing to it. They carve their patterns not just in the stones they left behind, but in the very vacuum of space that surrounds us. As we stand before these silent monuments today, we are looking at the remnants of a time when humanity knew how to speak the language of the stars, using the power of sound to bridge the gap between heaven and earth. The patterns are still there, hidden in the proportions of the walls and the angles of the ceilings, waiting for the right note to wake them once again. The study of somatics reminds us that we live in a world of constant motion. Even the densest stone is a beehive of vibrating atoms. By visualizing these vibrations, we begin to see the world as the ancients might have seen it, not as a collection of solid, isolated objects, but as a shimmering tapestry of frequencies constantly weaving themselves into the shapes of life. The void is not a vacuum of nothingness, but a canvas of possibility where every sound is a brushstroke and every frequency is a law of form. As the investigation into this lost knowledge continues, the silence of the past begins to feel less like an absence and more like a breath held in anticipation, a prelude to a song that we are only just beginning to hear. The mastery of sound was likely the highest science of antiquity, a discipline that combined music, mathematics, and engineering into a single, unified path. It is a path that leads us away from the idea of the ancients as primitive and toward a vision of them as masters of a technology so subtle and so integrated with nature that we have struggled to even recognize it. They did not leave behind gears and wires. They left behind harmony and resonance. They left behind the geometric echoes of a world built with sound, carving patterns into the void that still resonate through the holes of history, inviting us to listen more closely to the silence that remains. The concept of the universe as a vast, vibrating instrument is not a modern discovery, but an ancient inheritance. In the quiet of the pre-dawn hours, long before the mechanical roar of the industrial age, the world possessed a different kind of silence. It was a silence filled with the subtle rhythms of the earth and the distant, unseen pulse of the heavens. To the ancient mind, this was not merely poetic metaphor. It was the fundamental architecture of reality. They believed that the stars, the planets, and the very ground beneath their feet were all parts of a singular cosmic composition. This is a celestial scale, a lost map of frequencies that once guided the hands of architects, priests, and astronomers alike. The journey into this hidden resonance begins in the 6th century before the Common Era, in the sun-drenched coastal cities of Magna Graecia. Pythagoras of Samos, a man whose name is now synonymous with the cold logic of geometry, views the world through a much more melodic lens. Legend tells us that as he passes a blacksmith's forge, he notices the different pitches produced by hammers of varying weights. He realizes that the intervals between the notes are governed by simple mathematical ratios. A string halved in length produces an octave. A string reduced by a third produces a perfect fifth. In these numbers, Pythagoras finds the soul of the world. He concludes that if these ratios govern the beauty of a song, they must also govern the beauty of the cosmos. This realization gives birth to the Musica Universalis, or the music of the spheres. Pythagoras and his follower propose that the celestial bodies, as they move through the ether, produce a sound. Each planet, according to its distance from the earth and the speed of its orbit, emits a specific tone. These tones combine into a celestial harmony so perfect that the human ear, accustomed to it from birth, simply perceives it as silence. For the Pythagoreans, the goal of philosophy and science is to attune the human spirit to this divine frequency. They see the stars not as cold, distant points of light, but as the vibrating strings of a cosmic lyre. The influence of this celestial scale extends far beyond the borders of Greece. Across the Mediterranean, the builders of the Great Pyramid of Giza appear to have encoded this same harmonic wisdom into the very stone of the plateau. When we stand inside the king's chamber, The air feels heavy with an almost tangible stillness. The chamber is constructed of red granite, a stone rich in quartz crystals known for their piezoelectric properties. The dimensions of the room are not arbitrary. They follow the same mathematical proportions that Pythagoras would later describe. When a human voice hums a low note in this space, the entire room begins to breathe. The walls do not just reflect the sound, they amplify it, creating a standing wave that vibrates through the marrow of the bone. Archaeologists and acousticians have discovered that the coffer within the king's chamber is tuned to a frequency that resonates with a human skull. It is a fundamental tone that suggests the pyramid is more than a tomb. It is a resonator designed to bridge the gap between the terrestrial and the celestial. The pyramid serves as a physical manifestation of a frequency, a stone instrument tuned to the heartbeat of the earth and the movements of the stars. It is as if the ancients are attempting to capture a specific vibration and hold it in place for eternity, anchoring the fleeting resonance of the heavens into the permanence of the desert. Moving north to the windswept plains of England, we find Stonehenge, another monument that speaks to the celestial scale. While much has been said about its alignment with the solstices, its acoustic properties are equally profound. The blue stones used in its inner circle are unique. When struck, they do not produce a dull thud, but a clear, metallic ring, earning them the name lithophones, or singing stones. Many of these stones were transported from hundreds of miles away in Wales, a monumental task that suggests their sound is as vital as their appearance. Modern acoustic mapping of Stonehenge reveals that the circular arrangement of the massive sarsens creates a sophisticated sound chamber. Sound produced at the center are contained and reflected back, while noisy from outside the circle are dampened. In the center of the henge, the world falls away. The sound of a drum or a chant becomes an immersive experience, a rhythmic pulse that mimics the cycles of the moon and the sun. The stones act as a filter, separating the sacred resonance of the ritual from the chaotic noise of the natural world. It is a place where the scale of the heavens is brought down to earth, allowing the participants to step inside the music of the spheres. In ancient China, the celestial scale takes the form of the yellow bell, or the huanggong. This is a foundational pitch pipe, a standard of measurement that dictates not only the tuning of musical instruments, but also the weights and measures of the entire empire. The length of the pipe is believed to be divinely inspired, a physical representation of the cosmic order. If the music of the court is out of tune with the yellow bell, it is feared that the empire will fall into chaos, as the harmony between heaven and earth has been broken. The emperor is a conductor of this great social orchestra, and his primary duty is to ensure that the kingdom remains in resonance with the celestial frequency. This ancient obsession with harmonic proportions suggests a worldview where everything is interconnected. The distance between the planets, the growth patterns of a nautilus shell, and the intervals of a musical scale are all seen as different expressions of the same underlying truth. This is the law of correspondence. As above, so below. By building structures that mirror the mathematical ratios of the heavens, the ancients believe they can draw down celestial power. They are not just building walls and roofs, they are creating sympathetic resonators. Consider the layout of ancient cities, such as Angkor Wat in Cambodia or Teotihuacan in Mexico. These sites are often designed as terrestrial maps of the stars. The placement of temples mirrors the positions of constellations like Draco or Orion. When the sun reaches a specific point in the sky, it triggers an architectural symphony. Light and shadow dance across the carvings, creating the illusion of movement, while the vast courtyards are designed to carry the sound of thousands of voices in unison. The city itself becomes a living instrument, a giant gear in a cosmic clockwork that hums with the frequency of the divine. This connection to the celestial scale also manifests in the way the ancients perceived the human body. In many traditions, the body is seen as a microcosm of the universe. The chakras in Vedic tradition or the meridians in Chinese medicine are often associated with specific sounds or tones. Healing is not just a matter of chemistry, but of resonance. To heal a person is to retune them, to bring their internal frequency back into alignment with the celestial scale. The use of chanting, singing bowls, and gongs are all tools designed to vibrate the body back into its natural state of harmony. The more we examine these ancient sites and traditions, the more we realize that our ancestors did not see sound as a secondary phenomenon. To them, sound is the primary substance of creation. The word in the Bible, the OM of the Upanishads, the song of the Aboriginal Dreamtime, these are all descriptions of a universe brought into being through vibration. The celestial scale is the blueprint for that creation. It is the set of rules that governs how energy becomes matter. As the sun sets over these ancient ruins, the shadows lengthen, and the air cools, one can almost hear the faint echo of this lost frequency. It is a reminder that we live in a world that is far more rhythmic than we often realize. We are surrounded by cycles, from the beating of our hearts to the rotation of the Earth and the long, slow orbits of the outer planets. Each of these cycles has a frequency, a note in the grand celestial scale. The ancients built their world with this understanding at its core. They did not see themselves as separate from the cosmos, but as a vital part of its ongoing performance. Their temples, their myths, and their music were all designed to keep them in tune with the infinite. They understood that to listen to the heavens is to understand the self, and to build in harmony with the celestial scale is to build something that truly lasts. The stones remain, silent but pregnant with potential. They stand as sentinels of a time when humanity knew how to listen to the stars. In the quiet of the night, if we allow our minds to still and our senses to sharpen, we might find that the celestial scale is still playing. The music of the spheres has not stopped. We have simply forgotten how to hear it. The ancients invite us to reclaim this inheritance, to find the resonance that connects our small lives to the vast, vibrating theater of the stars. Through the geometry of their ruins and the mathematics of their myths, they leave us a map, a guide to the frequencies that once shaped the world. We are left to wonder if, by finding these lost notes once again, we might finally understand the true nature of our place in the cosmic song. The sun begins its slow descent over the Giza Plateau, casting long and geometric shadows across the cooling sands. The air grows still, yet the landscape feels charged with an invisible energy that transcends a visual world. In these final moments of light, the massive stones of the Great Pyramid do not appear as mere obstacles of granite and limestone. Instead, they stand as silent resonators, tuned to a frequency that we are only beginning to comprehend. The day fades, but the vibration remains. It is a fundamental truth of the physical world that nothing is ever truly still. From the smallest subatomic particle to the largest galaxy, everything is in a state of constant motion. This movement is a pulse, a rhythm, and a song that has been playing since the moment of the Big Bang. In the laboratories of the modern era, physicists speak of string theory with a sense of wonder that mirrors the awe of the ancient mystics. They suggest that the building blocks of the universe are not solid particles, but tiny, vibrating loops of energy. Like the strings of a cosmic cello, these loops vibrate at different frequencies to produce the varied particles that make up our reality. A certain frequency produces an electron, while another produces a quark. In this view, the entire universe is not a collection of silent objects, but a vast and unfolding symphony. The ancient architects, though they lacked our mathematical notation and our silicon senses, may have understood this intuitively. They built their temples to be instruments that played in harmony with this cosmic background hum, ensuring that their civilizations were literally in tune with the nature of existence. Imagine standing in the center of a stone circle at midnight. The wind whistles through the gaps in the monoliths, but beneath that sound is something deeper. There is a low-frequency rumble that bypasses the ears and speaks directly to the chest and the bone. This is the heartbeat of the world. Geologists call it the Schumann resonance, a set of electromagnetic frequencies circling the Earth, fueled by the lightning that strikes the atmosphere thousands of times every minute. The primary frequency of this resonance is 7.83 Hertz. It is a frequency that matches the alpha waves of the human brain, those associated with deep relaxation, creativity, and meditation. When we stand in these ancient places, we are stepping into a resonant chamber that aligns our biological rhythms with the rhythms of the planet itself. The transition from the noisy world of the present to the resonant world of the past is like moving from a crowded city street into the depths of a still, clear lake. As we sink deeper into the silence, we begin to hear the textures of the void. We realize that silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of a sound so perfect and so constant that we have forgotten how to perceive it. The ancient builders did not see the world as something to be conquered or shouted over. They saw it as something to be amplified. By placing a stone here or a chamber there, they were focusing the natural music of the earth into a concentrated beam of intent. They were the conductors of a silent orchestra, using the weight of the earth to lift the spirit of humanity toward the stars. As the night deepens, we look toward the constellations that have watched over these monuments for millennia. To the ancients, the stars were not just distant balls of gas, but the sources of the highest frequencies. This was the music of the spheres, a concept that persisted from the time of Pythagoras through the Middle Ages. They believed that the celestial bodies moved in mathematical proportions that mirrored the intervals of a musical scale. The moon, the sun, and the planets each sang a note that contributed to the grand harmony of the cosmos. This was a world where science, art, and spirituality were not separate disciplines, but were different ways of listening to the same song. The monuments we study today were likely the terrestrial antennas for this celestial music, designed to catch the falling light and turn it into a rising sound. We must consider the possibility that our modern life is a form of acoustic static. We are surrounded by the hum of electricity, the roar of engines, and the constant chatter of digital communication. These sounds are jagged and disconnected. They do not resonate with the earth or with our bodies. They create a dissonance that leaves us feeling untethered and exhausted. But when we return to the ancient sites, or even when we simply close our eyes and visualize a massive, heavy stillness, we are reclaiming a piece of that lost harmony. We are allowing our internal vibrations to slow down, to smooth out, and to sync with the eternal frequency. This is a true power of the lost frequency theory. It is not just a historical curiosity. It is a map back to a state of being where we are at peace with the world around us. The great cathedrals of Europe, with their soaring vaults and intricate stonework, were among the last great projects to utilize their sacred acoustics. When a choir sings in the nave of a cathedral, the architecture does more than just echo the voices. It shapes them. It stretches the notes and carries them upward, creating a shimmer of sound that feels as if it is coming from the walls themselves. This is the same principle used in the underground chambers of Malta and the granite rooms of Egypt. It is a use of physical matter to transcend physical matter. It is a reminder that we are not just bodies living in a world of objects. We are vibrating entities living in a world of waves. As we fade further into this understanding, the boundaries of the self begin to soften. If everything is vibration, then there is no real separation between the person and the environment. We are part of the same continuous fabric of frequency. The ancient builders knew this. They did not build to set themselves apart from nature, but to weave themselves more tightly into it. Their structures were the looms on which the music of the earth and the music of humanity were woven together. When we think of these sites now, we should not think of them as ruins. We should think of them as dormant instruments, waiting for the right moment, or perhaps the right state of mind, to be played once again. The story of sound in history is a story of our relationship with the unseen. It is a narrative that suggests our ancestors were far more sophisticated than we often give them credit for. They were masters of the invisible. They understood that the most powerful forces in the universe are often the ones that cannot be seen or touched, but only felt. As we reflect on the pyramids, the stone circles, and the hidden chambers, we are invited to listen more closely to our own lives. We are encouraged to find the resonances that sustain us and to let go of the dissonances that tire us. In the quiet of the night, the earth continues to hum. It does not care if we are listening, yet it offers its song to anyone who stops to hear. The mountains vibrate with a slow, deep bass of tectonic movements. The oceans pulse with the rhythmic percussion of the tides. The atmosphere carries the melodic whispers of the wind. This is the eternal vibration, the background radiation of existence that has been present since the beginning and will remain long after the last stone has turned to dust. It is a song of cycles, of rising and falling, of breath and stillness. As you drift toward sleep, imagine that you are lying on the floor of a great ancient hall. The stones are cool beneath you, and the air is heavy with the scent of old earth and dry grass. The world outside is gone, replaced by the deep, steady pulse of the room. You can feel the vibration in the floor, a gentle thrumming that matches the beating of your heart. With every breath, you sink deeper into this resonance. The noise of the day, the worries of the future, and the regrets of the past all dissolve into the frequency. There is only the sound, and the sound is peace. The history of the world is not just written in books or carved in stone. It is recorded in the very air we breathe and the frequencies that ripple through our cells. By seeking out the lost notes of the ancients, we are not just uncovering secrets of the past. We are rediscovering a part of ourselves that has been drowned out by the modern age. We are learning to hear the music once again. And in that listening, we find a sense of belonging that is older than civilization and deeper than the sea. The eternal vibration continues. It carries us through the night, a steady and unwavering companion. It reminds us that we are part of something vast, something beautiful, and something profoundly harmonious. As the world grows dark and the mind grows quiet, we let go of the need to understand, and we simply allow ourselves to be carried. We fade into the music. We dissolve into the rhythm. We become one with the eternal song of the universe, resting in the knowledge that we have always been and will always be a vital note in the cosmic symphony. The stones are silent, but the song is everywhere. The vibration remains. The vibration is eternal. The vibration is home. Peace is found in the resonance. Rest is found in the frequency. The journey through the soundscapes of history ends here, in the perfect and beautiful stillness of the ultimate vibration. One final breath, one final note, and then the deep and restorative embrace of the silent night.